As Papa Wheeler would say, take it away. All right. Yeah, okay. All right. Ambassador face is frozen still. So um I guess it's a part of the territory. Global greetings, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Everything Agriculture. And this evening, man, I can tell you, if challenges, some days it's just, a day of, you know, challenges and struggles. Well, today is like one of those days for us and real entertainment network, So we are, starting a bit late. We would have had a bit of technical difficulties. Um, and we are okay. So we are now live and lively with you, my people. I was kind of checking to make sure that we are live and lively, and yes, we are. So we are live with you, Oli. We are live with you, Layamiga, the entire Eastern Caribbean, America, Canada, China, Russia, India, Brazil, Czechoslovakia, Taiwan, wherever you may be in Africa. Tonight, we are going to be having a very discussion, and we're looking forward to a very engaging edition of Everything Agriculture, because tonight it's not just to be us talking about agriculture and St. Nevis and in the Caribbean. Well, we do generally talk about agriculture globally because we are not limited to any geographic space. But this evening, we are hopeful to find out more about what is going on in the Ghana space and in the Nigerian space, in African space, as we get an opportunity to speak with our guest this evening. Now, I must apologize for Ras Banki, who is also having some technical difficulty on his end logging in. And so I am here having to you know, be that guy to hold the spot down and take care of things this evening. So I want to say a very special good evening to everybody who generally log in here on this platform, and we want to encourage you to visit our YouTube platform. Go to YouTube and look for Real Entertainment Network and log in and subscribe, like, and share to have a lot more of you over on that platform. I want to encourage you to look forward to that space because that's where we are going to be doing a lot more on that platform. So we would still, be active on Twitch and on Facebook, but we are going to be ramping up. It's always a pleasure to be here with, my people in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and to, get updated on what is going on the ground on St. Kitts and Nevis. And also, to be able to do anything to develop agriculture on St. Kitts and Nevis and globally as well. Um, Tonight, we are seeing our very special guest this evening, and our special guest is joining us from Africa, all the way in Ghana, and we should say home, as the one of the organizations that I represent in Ghana says, Yenkofe, which means, as they say, let's go home, right? So let's go home, which means Ghana should be home for us, and we really should be thinking along that lines. So with that said, what we're going to do, we're going to introduce Ambassador Johnson, with who is with us this evening, and we're going to be talking about some of the wonderful things that she's doing in Africa in regards to agriculture, and also update us on some of the things that we have been doing behind the scenes, and also some of the things we are proposing for St. Kitts and Nevis, and the Caribbean by extension, but we're hopeful that we could launch on St. Kitts and Nevis and then spread through to this edition of Everything Agriculture. Say greetings to the public.
Hello. Good morning.
Okay, so first up, you could introduce yourself and tell the folks a little bit more about who is Ambassador Johnson. So let's do that so that at least they could have an idea of who they are communicating with, and then we could get into some of the discussions and some of the other things that you are doing and all that. So I'll give you a minute or two to let the folks who are listening for the first time know who is Ambassador Johnson.
Okay, great. Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes, we're hearing you loud and clear.
perfect. So thank you, Yashan. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. My name is Ambassador Davisha L. Johnson. I'm calling in from Ghana, West Africa. I am the Goodwill Ambassador for the state of Georgia. I come from the United States before moving to Ghana in 2021. I have been in the agriculture space for almost 30 years. I have been in the cannabis and hemp space specifically for 25 years, 24 years. Next year will be 25 years. My parent and my father was a farmer. My grandmother on my mother's side was also a farmer. So I find myself during COVID getting into the agriculture industry to feed my 4 children. So I realized that it was in my blood at that point. It was very easy for me to grow just about anything. And so I used my 10 years of architecture and construction management education between Atlanta and Houston, commingled with my 8 years in politics and my degree in political science to now build farms for African governments, Black governments. I work with many folks across the value chain of agriculture, from farmers to manufacturers to policymakers. So I understand the process of how to make sure not only do we feed people, but that we can do it at scale and that it can be sustainable for rural communities, most likely Black communities or underdeveloped communities around the world, and then urban communities, places that are growing fast with the youth population that doesn't necessarily want to be on the farm, which is why I developed what's called the Rebranding the Black Farmer campaign that we started last year, is to re-educate ourselves as Black people on our relationship with agriculture. What does that look like? because for a very long time it looked like slavery, it looked like punishments, it looked like hard labor, it looked like undesirable, it looked like it was for the illiterate or those that could not find anything else to do. It looked like feeding ourselves for consumption and not a possible revenue stream or career. But in 2025, we find ourselves not only with technology, but with the understanding that food is a part of Black culture. We come together around food in any part of the world, no matter what the culture is. We break bread with each other as a symbol of trust and understanding of ourselves. And so, what we find now with the geopolitical situation is that there is a battle for who controls our food. And whoever controls the food controls the world. So, we as Black people need to take ownership of what we have been able to build the planet on, which is surviving from what we know how to do, which is agriculture, which is farming. So we want to rebrand the Black second century. We're already in 21st century in 2025, so we are forward thinking ahead another 100 years already. What does the year 2100 look like for agriculture for what's going to be my grandchildren? I think as Black people, we need to start not just talking about legacy, but actually planning on what that looks like, and it starts with food. So I'm very excited to have this conversation. I'm very grateful and thankful that you've invited me here this morning, midnight here in Ghana. But I have a very, very good understanding of not only the Caribbean community. Growing up in Canada, my best friend was from Trinidad. A lot of my friends were from the Caribbean or Africa because there was no African Americans in Manitoba, in Canada, where I came from. So, very interested to not only link physically the Caribbean, Black America, or Black North America, and Africa, but globally. So we have ambassadors in Israel, we have one in Asia Pacific, there's one in South America, Canada, United States, and myself here in Africa. So I'm very excited to talk to you about some of the projects that we have and some of the things that you and I have been working on here on the continent to bridge that gap. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to share some of what's been happening behind the scenes. It's sometimes always better to do it this way because, sometimes, they say a king has no honor in their own country, So sometimes it takes someone to really let folks know some of what's happening, behind the scenes or what, I've been doing as an ambassador myself for agriculture and for St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean by extension. So I think you would have given a very good introduction in terms of what you do, where you're coming from, and how you got into the agricultural space. Despite you have other professions, let's talk about that a little bit because it's I'm sure quite interesting for people um, in the Caribbean and in the world on a whole because I can't let that slip by where you also mentioned that you would have had over 10 years in the architectural and construction side of things. Now, there are two things there because one, that was generally quote unquote male dominated territory. And you being a female in that space and holding your space, and two, to then, so to speak, flip. Well, I wouldn't say flip because right now you're kind of using the knowledge from that still to assist with the agricultural side of things. But how were you able to um, just move, so to speak, from out of that space and get into the agricultural space in this heavy and intense way? What motivated you and inspired you along those things, and how did that change?
So thank you for that question. It I guess it was a long way around. And I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in purpose driven work. And I found purpose during COVID. But I started in probably middle school wanting to be two different things. I wanted to be a lawyer or an architect. And I like to talk, I like to argue, so I thought I'd make a great lawyer. And then I'm very creative, and I used to draw a lot. I used to draw a lot, so I wanted to design. It wasn't necessarily the build aspect at first. It was more of the design. How do I take this white piece of paper and just create something from my mind? And knowing that I could do that, and then it to physically be able to manifest itself into a building was very, empowering and exciting for me. So I spent 6 years studying architecture out of high school. I went to high school in most of my formative years in Winnipeg, Manitoba, in Canada. And in high school, they have what's called technology class. So they teach you about screen printing. So I know how to do screen printing on T-shirts and things like that. They teach you how to do airbrush painting. So I know how to paint with an airbrush. They teach you how to do black and white photography. So I know how to develop film and take pictures. Then they taught us about architecture. And back then it was like a parallel rule on a slide with a pencil and a ruler. There's no technology. It was very hands-on design. And it really caught my attention. So I graduated high school in 99 in Atlanta after moving to Canada to get free education. They were giving out a scholarship for college. You had to be a resident for a year. So my mother decided to move us from Winnipeg to Atlanta, in a place I had never been to. I didn't really grow up around Black people because there weren't any Black people in Canada, that Black Americans. There were Canadians and a lot of Caribbeans and Africans of a lot of different countries, but there really wasn't any at all Black Americans in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So being thrust into an environment with nothing but Black Americans and from the South was a culture shock as a Black woman, even as a Black woman. So that was kind of the shift from architecture to construction was a forced shift from living in the South. So I spent 6 years in architecture school, and then I got pregnant with my second child. I was a teenage mother, my first child when I was in the 10th grade in Winnipeg. And then I had my second child at 25. And I decided to go back to school, but they wouldn't let me into the architecture program in University of Houston. I had been out of school too long. I didn't have, proper paperwork, this, that, and the third. So I said, let me use my credits from 6 years of architecture so it's not wasted into something that's comparable. And what was available was construction management. So I spent 4 years studying construction management at University of Houston. I was at first I was the only Black woman in the entire department. My freshman year, I was on the dean's list. I was in all types of associations for construction and builders and Black women in construction and all types of things. And then not a good, like Michelle Obama, I'm a brilliant student. I'm just not a good standardized test taker. My brain does not work well sitting down and, taking tests, but I'm exceptional at other things. So I couldn't pass my national certification exam for construction management. So I never got a degree. So I spent 10 years in school with no degree. And so I went back to Atlanta from Houston and I got pregnant again, this time with twins. So at that point, I had my twins. I had 4 children. I needed a job, an actual job. I've always worked for myself. I've never really been in corporate America. You know, it's not built for everybody. So I tried it because, by choice or by force. It wasn't by choice.
Right,
So I
right,
had to use my at that point as well. So I went to work for one of the largest construction publications companies as a temporary worker. It's called McGraw Hill Construction, if you're familiar. And I worked for McGraw Hill for about 6 months as a temp, and then I got a permanent job, my first permanent job, designing homes for a large home manufacturer or developer called Beazer Homes in Atlanta. I worked for them for 6 months. And I realized corporate America, it just wasn't for me. Like getting to work and being on time was a problem. Having a lot of non-black people. I mean, I'm just being honest. Having a lot of non-black people around me that were supposed to supervise me that weren't as smart as me was a problem. Having younger people than me come to work late, and I know I have 4 children at home, and the dynamics of the office conversation couldn't possibly include me because they're talking about, taking vacation trips on the weekends to go to the spa, and I'm, changing diapers. So dynamics just weren't right for me. So I left and decided to go back to school. I've been, a nerd in that way. I love to learn. I like developing new ideas and actualizing them. So I decided to go back to school based off of a traffic ticket, actually. I was working at a law firm for 2 Black lawyers doing some paralegal work, hustling on the side, as you call it. And an opportunity came when I went to traffic court for a ticket that the officer had given that I refused to pay because I knew I was not in the wrong. So when I went to court, it was traffic court, but I made the officer at traffic court get up on the stand. I had rehearsed questions the night before. I thought, as I said in the beginning, I either wanted to be a lawyer or an architect, and I didn't have the degree, so I guess this was my path on to, being in a courtroom. So I took full advantage, and the judge was a Black woman, and she told me that I should go to law school. She said she had never seen anybody come into traffic court and actually have prepared questions for the officer for a $50 ticket. So she was like, "You should go to law school." So I said, "Okay." And a month later, I was a student at Georgia State studying political science. And then 2 years later, I saw that same judge at the state capitol because I was interning for the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. I was getting ready to graduate with my degree in political science. And I saw that same judge at the state capitol. And I could do nothing but thank her. She had changed my life. I was finally getting a degree after 17 years of graduating from high school. I was finally getting that one piece of paper, your parents always tell you need to get. But she said she was running for office at the time, and with my then boss, mine, if I helped her run her political campaign. So that's how I started into politics, and that's how I started running political campaigns. Was from that same judge in the courtroom that I saw 2 years later. So she and I ran DeKalb County, which is the largest Black county in the state, the 191 precinct. Um, a lot of work. I was thrown into the fire. I met a lot of great people. A lot of politicians became my friends. And then 8 years later, I ended up working for Bernie Sanders on his second presidential campaign. I ran over 40 campaigns, and probably in at least 5 or 6 different states in the United States. And so when Donald Trump became president in 2018, made him federally legal. And at the time, I was chief of staff for a Black elected official. knowing that they were going to keep Black people out of the cannabis and hemp space. So that's how I got into politics and weed. And that kind of took off. I started going to farms, talking to Black farmers on Mississippi between cannabis and hemp. And this is how we get into manufacturing. This is how we get into international commodity trading. This is how we get into import export. This is how we start developing cooperatives so we can have enough yield to be able to fulfill, large orders from foreign countries. And then someone invited me to Ghana in 2019. I didn't know anything about the free return. Like I said, I'm a businesswoman, and I was invited for business purposes. So I came to Ghana in 2019, and mine was blown. There was business opportunities everywhere. There were opportunities for not only construction and real estate and architecture that I love, but there was also opportunities in business, in tech, agriculture, and all these other things. So I started an investment tour. I was the first African American millennial to have an investment focused tour in Ghana. And then COVID hit. I was in Ghana when they started shutting down the airports. I actually had to call the U.S. government, the U.S. embassy, and get my boss to make sure I was on a plane because she's elected official. So that's how I got out of Ghana and wasn't stuck for COVID for 2 years to go back to my children in America. And when I got back to America, I was told that all the white people took all the food and that, there was no toilet paper left. And so with 4 children in my house, I figured, we can't starve. So what are we going to do? So I went to the dollar store. I got some seeds. I got some dirt. I got some pot, and I just started, planting stuff. I didn't have no idea what I was doing. I just read instructions because I'm smart. So the instructions are on the back of the pack of seeds on how deep to plant it, which goes back to my architecture degree for knowing, measurements and what type of spacing there needs to be. That went back to spatial planning from my architecture degree. And then what needs
Right.
to be built? Do I need to build a raised bed? I need to, stack certain things from designing a building, understanding where windows are supposed to go, from the way the sun rises and sets and where shade would hit at a certain time of day. These are all things that I already knew how to do from designing buildings. So that transformed now into 2025, where I work with governments and rural communities and local communities to design farms. So I build what's called the 1 Hectare Sustainable Farm. It's a vertically integrated ecosystem that encapsulates 30 different components of a live, work, play space, from hydroponics, aquaponics, greenhouses, outdoor grow, indoor grow, cryogenic, seed bank, visitor center, research center, everything that you can possibly think of. It's like a small eco city, but it's only on 1 hectare. Because in Africa, everybody has land. In Africa, almost 90% of people are growing something, but it's the design of the farm. It's the components that all fit together the same way I would design a building. So I get to use my 10 years of architecture and construction education, but also I get to feed people. I get to make social impact. And then I get to use my political degree and my experience running campaigns to educate policymakers, heads of state of African countries on the same thing, the difference between cannabis and hemp, how agriculture as an industry can help build generational wealth. So that's what I do at the Cooperative Executive Management Team, which is behind me. It's a farm management services company. We started in 2018, and we only focus on Black farmers. We're only focusing on Black farmers because I'm Black, and Black people need help. And if I had enough time on the planet, I would help everybody. But I don't have that time. So I decided to focus my time on my own people. And that's a hard line. So in anything that I do it for my people, and I work 100% with my. So now in 2025, we have 8 ambassadors around the world. We have over 100 farms in the country. We just expanded into Nigeria, opening 3 offices there. We're getting ready to go back there. Open more offices and some workshops and training. You and I are trying to have a huge opportunity for aviation contract to be able to provide specialized services, connect to bring that to not only the flights direct from the Caribbean to Africa, but when you get to Africa, what you gonna do? So can it tell us how much you probably bring down and pick it up to get it? Let's talk about how that investment tool is it's growing and still now paying your contract. That we
Hold one
expand
second. Hold 1 second. I don't know if maybe because a call came in or something, but it seems as if your audio kind of got muffled a little bit. So when you were talking about the flights into Ghana and so on, I'm not sure if we would have heard all of that and hear that clearly. Um, so yeah, maybe you could try again and let me hear if your voice is much better, or come closer to whatever device that the microphone is, so you could, yeah.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the airline that we got the opportunity to create is the physical bridge that we're building, you and I, Yashawn, to connect Africa to the Caribbean and connect what we call the hub diaspora, or the historically group of us from the transatlantic slave trade. Those of us that are trying to get home to Africa need a physical way that a commercial flight having with no direct and that line. So we're taking our own back. We're taking our ownership back through owning our roots and our culture, which is agriculture. In my mind, agriculture is Black culture. So we want to take ownership of that by rebranding the Black farmer. We want to take ownership of the connectivity we have between Africa and the Caribbean. So we need to make sure we get to and fro. So the airline is called the Ambassador Airways because we also
Our
understand that Black
ambassadors.
people have a particular
We are
culture
ambassadors.
to push forward.
We are ambassadors. Um, no, it's quite interesting your story, and I'm loving how you were able to, share almost all of the details, of the story. Now, it's interesting, I'm sure, to many from the Caribbean, because many from the Caribbean would aspire to, um, sorry, migrating or relocating to America because, they maybe see America as better than maybe where they may be at the time. At least that might be their perception, right? Um, but here is it that you were living in America and you would have left America, visited Africa, fell in love with Africa, and not just fell in love with it, but saw so many opportunities over there that you eventually relocated and became a citizen. Now, this is quite interesting because for the Caribbean, there's still many who have that kind of mindset that Africa is people over there starving and well, in more recent times, because of like Nollywood and people seeing these African movies and so on, a lot more of these African movies, and people start seeing more of that different side of Africa. It has helped to dispel a lot of those notions, but there's still a lot of people who still don't even consider, wouldn't even consider like a trip to Africa for a vacation or anything like that. They would be like, well, what is there to see? You know what I mean? Because in their mindset is more America, Canada, somewhere in Europe, you know, that's the mindset. Um, Help break that down a little bit for people us in the Caribbean. And I guess this also too explains a bit of what we are doing, because that is why I have become a part of the organization and have become the Caribbean ambassador to seek to really, as we are doing, make this a reality, not just talk anymore, not just say we should do it anymore, but actually doing it. um, but speak to that bit a little bit in terms of that, you know, change from America to Africa, and why should people in the Caribbean think that, you know, okay, we can do this. We should be linking with Africa. We should be connecting with our brothers and sisters. We should be linking in terms of trade and skill exchange and all that. Let's deal with that for a little bit.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's really important to understand that I've been to Jamaica, to Montego Bay maybe 3, 4 times in the last 5, 7 years. A lot of places in Bay look just like Ghana. This is where Safari outside of Ethiopia comes from. The Volta region in Ghana is where most of the Rasta community in regards to the transatlantic slave trade. It is genetically evident that that's where the Rastafari comes from. There are other places in America I wouldn't go. A lot of around at the Mexican where must come. And being in six for a song, I know to be real. Never had doubt at that point. So it wasn't just the
Um,
opportunities in Africa. It was let me go find out for myself. It was, let me be the judge of what is good and what is bad. Because I
right,
started to realize being in politics for so long, what the actual game, like what is the game that people are playing? How are developed countries, how and why underdeveloped countries like the ones in Africa still underdeveloped? If they're independent, if they have their independence, if there's all these opportunities, what's the problem? That's really what I think really hit me about the difference between America, the Caribbean, Africa are problems and the solution. Creating the problem and who's creating the solution. And what I realized in Africa is that the problem is being created by the same person that's creating the solution or the supposed solution, which is the Rockefeller plan, right? You create a problem or a disease, and then you create the antidotes or the treatment or the vaccine for that same disease that you created. Bill Gates had a picture on LinkedIn yesterday that really pissed me off, honestly, because it was, him with his, what do we call it, Mr. Rogers neighborhood outfit on, with his sweater, with his collared white shirt on, with his plain jeans, like he's a humble billionaire, but he was in the village in Africa with mountains, lush green mountains with fog, beautiful scene in the background, with a small African child next to him with some dead white man's clothes, as we call them here in Ghana, sitting next to her mother with her not best African attire, as if she was going somewhere, but everyday wear in the village. So it's the imagery that even to this day, as of yesterday in 2025, it's the imagery of the same people causing the problems and saying they have the solution of what they're putting out. And that imagery of Africa is not 100% true in the context that they're giving it to you. Yes, there's people in the village. Yes, there's starving children in Africa. But there's also starving children in Detroit. There's also no clean water in Detroit. There's also wars going on in Black neighborhoods in LA, gang wars, which are tribal wars to that effect. So there are so many things that I can spend the next 2 hours telling you that's comparable between America and the Caribbean and Africa. That's just the same. The difference is the peace. The peace that you find in Africa is unmeasurable. It's unfathomable. It's knowing that I moved to Ghana because I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and my Black boys were not safe in Decatur, Georgia. They were going outside to play at the playground and collecting gun shells as, an activity. So I knew that I need to be somewhere that was safe for my boys. And Africa is that safe space. As a Black man coming to the continent, you're not a Black man. You're just a man because everybody's Black. As a Black woman coming to Africa, the type of what we call home training, like how did your mama teach you how to behave? What did your grandmama teach you on how to be a good person and how to treat women? Those are things that exist here. I don't even hold my own purse. I don't even, carry my own groceries. I don't even drive my own car because as a queen, if you're going to call a Black woman a queen, then there are certain things that you as a king or you as a man need to exhibit to your queen. And the matriarchal society of the culture of Africa still holds on to that culture. They still understand not only the hierarchy from a matriarchal system to a patriarchal system, but the culture of community still exists in Africa. It doesn't exist in America. Black people have to go for what they know. They have to do what they got to do for themselves. It's a every man for himself type of scenario. So the basic raw culture and the peace that you feel on the continent is worth every dime. It's worth every problem. It's worth every challenge. Peace of mind is just something that you can't buy. And that's what you get in Ghana. So if you're having challenges in Jamaica or St. Kitts and you feel like you need somewhere else to go, America's not it, especially right now. In my professional political opinion, America is not it. America is a trap that you're going to get stuck in debt. You're going to get stuck in, microaggressions, excessive racism at this point. And so why? Why would you do that when in the next 10 years the dollar is going to be devaluated because everybody's rushing to Africa? So at the end of the day, Black people just need to follow the money. Just follow the money. If white folks are going to Africa and telling you not to go, then you should go. If white people are going to South America and telling you not to go, then you should go. Because they're not going to go anywhere with a bunch of Black people where they feel unsafe. Think about that. When you're in America as a Black person and you're walking down the street, male or female, and there's a white person and they walk beside you and clutch their purse, that's something ingrained in them. So why would white people go anywhere where they feel unsafe? They wouldn't. It's just not smart. So all these places, especially Nigeria, if I can speak to that for a second, that country is so, talked about in a negative light because it's probably the one place we should be going. It's probably the one place with the most hustle mentality of business people in the world. That's why Nigerians are revered for not only their intelligence, but their ability to build businesses and build empires and build companies outside of Nigeria. Like these people are not, playing around. And I realized that going to Nigeria and spending the last 30 days there, that Ghana was the exit. But that's not where most Black people come from. Most Black people come from all those surrounding countries, or even walking from Israel. If we want to take it back to, have a deeper conversation about where we actually came from. But to land in Ghana and then be transported to these other places, the year of return 2019 was a year of return to come back to Africa. It wasn't necessarily to come back to Ghana, but it was to come back to Africa. So if you are interested in understanding what your options are, Africa as a continent is an option. Ghana is the safest place to start, but you do not have to end here. You can go to any of the 53 other African countries, and each of the 5 regions has a different personality, has a different culture. If you are, a corporate person, you're looking for a job, then East Africa is probably going to be better suited for you. They have far more advanced structures, policies, digitization, things like that. But there's a lot of white folks in East Africa, and there's a lot of affinity to white folks in East Africa. If you're a hustler like me and you kind of get it where you know how to get it, and you're in business for yourself, and you understand the hustle and bustle of what that looks like, West Africa is going to be the place for you. Ghana, Nigeria, Burkina Faso now with Ibrahim Traore and the president and what he's doing there is also very enticing to people that want to be part of a movement. So there's something in Africa for everybody, but you have to come here and see for yourself. I can't describe it to you and you believe me, just like I can't describe America to an African and tell them, don't go to America. It doesn't matter what I say. They want to go to America. So if they want to go to America, it's my job to make provisions as, an advocate for the diaspora. If you want to go to America and Americans want to come to Africa, then let's swap. An even swap ain't no swindle, as we say. So I think it's time for Black folks to move around. We're not, someone told me the other day, I'm not a tree. I'm an eagle. I'm not meant to be planted and stay in one place. I'm meant to fly. So there's lots of people that are meant to fly that are finding now in 2025 the courage or the money or the motivation or whatever it is to get up and go. And I would suggest that people come to Africa.
I'm loving that, and I'm loving your explanation. This is a good time for me to introduce my co-host who has joined us, who would have heard a bit of your presentation. That's Banky. This is Ambassador Davisha Johnson, and she is joining us from Ghana as we speak. At this point, we are working together. I am the Caribbean ambassador for her organization, and one of the things that we're going to get into eventually is speaking a little bit more about that 1 hectare project that we are seeking to roll out in the region. And I have proposed as the Caribbean ambassador to start with St. Kitts and we are at present in negotiations with the government, so the speaker proposed it to them, but we use this opportunity to share with the public what is about some of the opportunities and so on that's involved in it. And then after explaining that, Ambassador Johnson, then we will also talk about the cannabis and hemp aspect of it. But before we do that, we'll allow Banky to give his introduction and his opening remarks and all that, and then we'll get back to you. So Banky, greetings.
Yes, good evening. Greetings to everyone and greetings to Ambassador Johnson. How are you doing? And greatly appreciate you making the time out to be a part of the Everything Agriculture Show. Greatly appreciate that. I mean, you didn't have to, so we appreciate Yasan bringing you on, and surely the viewing and listening audience is enjoying a lot for what you have to say. I mean, many of us haven't been over there, so it's very interesting and enticing. Because many times when you think of the motherland, is a lot of negativity. So to hear from someone perspective like you, then they get a better understanding. It's just like going to New York or anywhere else. Cause most of them think primitive. So yeah, so I just want to say good evening to everyone who is tuning in on this Friday evening. Greatly appreciated. I mean, I had a little technical difficulties getting on, but still, I know you're gonna hold on the fort. I ain't gonna be too long with the introduction. I mean, the ambassador seemed to have a lot to talk about, so I'm gonna let her use up her time and talk as much as she got to say. I'm just enjoy listening. So when you have some more other knowledge and seem to be historical from when speaking, so there's a lot to say. So in times like these, I just like to listen. So Ambassador, greatly appreciate welcome and hope you'll be back many more times. Yes, son?
Yeah, well, definitely. She will be back with us. And even based on this conversation here, I can assure you that there's a lot that we will not get covered this evening. But like I said, we're gonna get into two aspects, and one part I'm sure is going to be quite interesting because at present, that's one of the hot topics right now as we decriminalize uh, decriminalization, open up the Medical Cannabis Authority of on St. Kitts and Nevis, and so that is a hot and spicy topic at this point. And the Johnson has been working in the cannabis space for over 25 years, and she is also a part of the training and rolling out where cannabis and hemp is concerned. So that is going to be one aspect of the topic. But before we get to that part, I just want you to tell the public about this 1 hectare project that we are proposing to St. Kitts and Nevis at this point. And one of the reasons why, Banky, we are agriculturalists. And when I heard about the project, there was a point where um, I was invited, because I think that's how we met actually. I was invited by Ambassador Johnson to be on a Zoom call in relation to agriculture and so on. And I began sharing some of my visions and plans and what I want to do and so forth. And she then shared with me the vision of her 1 hectare model. And I was quite impressed because what it did for me to some extent was still summarize a little bit of what I have in mind on a larger scale, but she's able to put it in a smaller aspect that functions more like a demo model, right? And she was sharing that at that point she was looking at rolling it out in Africa. Right? I was like, well, how about we work together and let's see if we can get this into the Caribbean, because we have our challenges with food sovereignty and food security. And the project does not just involve, the growing of the food, which would be a part of um, ensuring food security, but also a lot of the technical aspects and certifications that go along with it, and ability to also deal with the marketing and logistics and distribution of the products, and actually even also creating value added products as well. So it spoke to where I saw um, us moving forward on St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean. And so I got on board, like in a heartbeat. And ever since then, we have developed their other businesses that we probably mentioned, like we talk about the airline and so on. But this is one that we're really, you know, zoomed in on, because we also see that this is a true way of us really empowering our people and putting them in a position where they can take care of themselves. So at Ambassador Johnson, I'm giving you the opportunity now to tell us about our 1 hectare project and get into that in a bit of detail.
She freeze? Yes, son. It look like she
Look,
freezing now.
okay. Well, if so, when it's back in, she to explain a little bit more of that. But the 1 hectare model is, something that we're really looking to, um,
Tell
as
her
a
reset.
demo model.
Send her a message, yes, and
Yes,
tell her to reset.
a
To
demo model.
log out and log back in, okay?
Yeah. Well, so go on and reason then. In the meantime, while I seek to make
Yes,
that adjustment.
I just want to tell you all also, remember this is the 75th anniversary of the Charleston Secondary School. And so they're asking donation because they want to renovate the hall. You already know how the hall was, all who went there still remain the same. Practically, it's like you take you back in time if you visit the school at any time. You realize the same push out windows, the same concrete floor, just is the same. The shutters then be repaired over the years, so it just no fans, one or two lights. Just this the same old same. Not much have been done for it. So you go there, you recognize the first thing as you go up. You go, okay, yeah, this is it. And the same thing goes for the Gingerland Secondary School too. So for right now, the committee for the Charleston Secondary School for the 75th anniversary, they want to take up that also as one of the things they want to do, renovate the auditorium, so it's at least be more comfortable, and in the future it could always be used as a place of to bring in income for the school. So that is something. I mean, so much people pass through the Charleston Secondary School, definitely, and that, I mean, they're proposing that each person donate $75, but if you can give more, it's also appreciated to the cause. Cause definitely, the school always asking for stuff because they seem not to get much from education, and that is something I really really don't understand. So definitely, they also have some 75th anniversary pins available for sale for only $10, so you can get as much as you want. So you can, if you have friends who went to the school, let them know, well, their 75th anniversary pins, and you can collect their money also, and then go to the school, the office. Also, they'll be setting up an account. I'm not sure which institution where you can make donation, but in the meanwhile, go to the school office and the secretary or the head teacher, Miss Paris, and just let them know you've been hearing about the donation that is needed for the school, for the auditorium and other repairs at the school on the Everything Agriculture show. Because I'm the PRO, so my job is to put out the information and let everyone know to go in at the school where this is exam time also. So also encourage your children them to make sure they do the SBAs. If the SBAs take up a lot of most of the marks, take you into the exam room almost up to 60%. So 40%. So you stand a bit higher chance of passing that subject. So it's important that you do well in the SBAs and stuff like that. So parents, make sure sometimes it's challenging at the time, but make sure to put in the work. What you put in is what you get out. We all learn different, and that's nothing name hard, nothing name this. It's just about putting in the time, and that's what is important. So also, I realize there's a poster going around, so there should be a cannabis meeting next week Thursday at the Department of Agri from the Cannabis Authority, which opened last week Friday. I think I stand to be corrected, or the week before. Time flies so fast. Sometime you don't even realize, but it opened on the 25th. So it's easy to put it that way. Yeah. So they're having a cannabis meeting at the agriculture conference room at Lagreed from 4:30 to 8 o'clock, something like that. So if you have any interest about the cannabis and the medical water industry, or any concerns about how everything was rolled out,
It's
then
from six. It's from 6 to 8.
six
I'm
to
reading.
eight.
I'll read from it here. It says town
Okay,
hall
my
town hall
bad.
meeting Thursday 15th May. Medical cannabis
Yes.
discussion. Department of Agriculture conference room Lagweed from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay.
So folks,
Yes.
on St. Kitts and Nevis, you definitely wanna go out and be a part of that discussion. To some extent, Banky, I feel what they're doing now is what they should have done before. But anyway, let's get back to
Yes.
Ambassador Johnson because it seems as if she's back here. So I'm going to give her the
Um,
opportunity now to where we left off was I was going to give her the opportunity to share with us more about the 1 hectare model project that we are proposing for St. Kitts and Nevis, the Caribbean, and also that's being rolled out in Africa as we speak.
Great, can you hear me?
Yes, we're
yes,
hearing you.
yes.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. It's my legacy project, as I would call it. The 1 Hectare Sustainable Farm is a mix of all the things that I spoke about. It's a vertically integrated ecosystem. So imagine an urban community farm mixed with a live, work, play, real estate development, mixed with a fully functional educational school system from primary to university to postdoctorate. We have partnerships with government agencies like the Ministry of Health to do research for medicines, plant-based medicines, herbal medicine. We have partnerships with research institutes to create value-added products. There are 7 different revenue streams that come from each farm. There are 12 different types of farm models. So everything ranging from the elementary school level, there's a 1 hectare sustainable farm built for elementary schools. So if there's a school anywhere around the world that has 1 hectare of land or 2.5 acres, we build it around the education of that demographic. So how do pre-K children learn about agriculture in 2025? Not in 1981 when I was born, but in 2025, how do we rebrand what the Black farmer looks like? We have to start with children. So we have an education and gardening workshop where we partner with a school in Atlanta that not only teaches children about the fun things about agriculture, but it allows them to eat. And one thing we know about education, especially early childhood education, is that their brains cannot function properly unless they're fed. And the type of food that they're fed also affects their brain capacity and how they learn in the school environment. So we try and focus on what is most important to that particular age demographic. So the first model is elementary school farm. The second model is a middle school farm. So what are kids between the ages of 12 and 15 or 10 and 15? That's aquaponics and hydroponics. So we focus our middle school farms on the science of agriculture. What does that look like? If you want to get into cloning, if you want to get into specific types of methodologies for growing things, whether that's hydroponics or aquaponics. If you're an island nation, you'd be more interested in aquaponics for fish farming. A lot of people in Africa do fish farming that are in coastal areas. So reaching the children in those areas from that aspect is what we do for the second model type. The third is high school. So what do high school children want? They want to make money. And as parents, I don't want them spending my money. So I have to figure out how do we entice the teenager to want to be on the farm. We have to show them how to make money on being on the farm. So the third farm model is a small, medium-sized business incubation farm. So we have a farm, a high school in Kumasi in Ghana that has 500 students. I have a book that I wrote called Patio for Plate, How to Create a Veggie Oasis in 30 Days. So we transformed that book into a textbook for the high school students on how do we transform farm products into a business in 30 days. How do you leave high school directly going into your business? Because a lot of high school children don't want to go to college. College is not for everyone. I explained it took me 17 years to get a degree, and I'm very smart. I'm just not a good test taker. So everything is not for everybody, but every Black person deserves an opportunity. So the high school is kind of where it's split. You can either go into workforce development because you don't want to own a business, you want a job. That's what you want to do. Or you can go into economic development. You want to start a business, and therefore you can hire your friends. that you graduated high school with. But all of that starts with how do we turn bananas into banana popsicles and sell them on the open market? It's what my 13-year-old daughter has been able to do. So that's the third farm. The fourth is the university. When you get out of high school and you go to university, what does that look like for agriculture? Are you going to be an agronomist? Are you going to go into, biosciences, and you're going to start doing clones and strains and figuring out how to make medicines? That goes into research. So we have a university, a university farm model where we work with HBCUs in America and connect them to.
Yes, and she
Yeah,
freeze.
it seems as if
From Fort
maybe
Valley
a
State
car
University
can.
in Georgia come out to Ghana in January and spend 3 months here. Okay, can you hear me now? Am I back
Yes,
or am I
Yes.
still frozen?
yes. No, you're back.
Continue.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the challenge. Being
Development.
Forget you.
So we have some engagements with. Am I here? Am I back with you? Can you hear
yes,
You're
me?
no,
back. Yes.
yes, yes, no, yes.
Okay. So the university farm is for after the university farm. The fifth model is the research and fellowship farm. So those are in postdoc work, that are in research institutes, those that are sub agencies of ministries of government. So the Ministry of Health here in Ghana has several different agencies. One is and institutes. One is the Center for Plant Medicine Research. So we developed a partnership with them to have fellowship students. If there's a ministry, a minister, or staff of a ministry that wants to understand how to build one of these farms for their constituency, they are invited to come to Ghana for either a 3 month or a 6 month research um, fellowship, or there's a 1 year postdoc fellowship where you get to work directly with the research institutes on, again, products in the medical industry or in the retail space. So again, how do you turn shea butter into body wash? How do you turn coconuts into coconut oil? So the research component behind the 100% research model runs across the value. And then after the research fellowship model, then we go into nation building. So what does a community farm look like in a Black neighborhood? Black neighborhoods in America, Caribbean, South America, wherever they are, most of our neighborhoods are in food deserts. There's not healthy food around. There's not an opportunity for varieties of food. And as immigrants that come from other countries into America, the one thing again that connects Black people is food. So if we can't get familiarized food in the places that we go, that leads to depression, that leads to other health issues, that leads to emotional distress, because we can't eat properly, because that's what connects us to home. That's what connects us to our emotions. So the community farm is the sixth level farm, but it's based off of government interaction. So is that a state level government wants to do these farms? Is it a city councilman that wants to do a community garden for the community? Is it a chief in the village that wants to build a farm to feed 25,000 people a year? And then after that farm is the nation. So that's what Deshaun and I are working on, is how do you nationalize this program? What does that look like for the nation of Ghana? And we are able to build out any of the previous levels of farms throughout the country. So some parts of Ghana are very rural, and there's a lot of older generation of people. So they might not need an elementary school farm or a middle school farm or even a high school farm. They just need a farm for the village. So that's one model that they can choose. And then you have you want number nine. The ninth model is the Sahel. The Sahel nations, with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, are really transforming the way Africa looks. So, what does it look like to develop an entire industry from scratch? That can be done with the 1 hectare sustainable farm. And then the last farm is a specialty farm. So that those farms are specifically designed for cannabis and hemp. Because, as I said earlier, I got into that niche market about 25 years ago. There are certain provisions, just like in I think Grenada and also St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as Ghana, have enacted legislation for cannabis. So if you can have a controlled environment of this 1 hectare sustainable farm where the government can be confident that, it won't, as they say, leak into the system, and we can start building farms to grow cannabis for medicinal purposes. We can start growing hemp for fiber to make, concrete and textiles, to bring back industries for nations, for economic development. What do all those things look like? That is for that particular type of farm. And then the last one is just for Black communities. So we have 2 Black mayors in the United States that have agreed to sign on to the 100 Sustainable Farm Project to build these farms, particularly for Black communities that are in food deserts. So that not only do we have access to healthy food, but that community aspect that I talked about in Africa, you can develop that with these farms anywhere around the world because they're self-sustaining, they're vertically integrated, but they also take into account the culture of Black people and what we need as far as the types of food per geographical area around the world, and just the model of how they're built to understand the community that they're serving, what type of food needs to be grown, and the culture of how to make it sustainable. So that's just various different types of models of the 100 sustainable farm that we've been able to design. And now we're headed into our second year of actualization to building these farms in Ghana. So we've got 63 farms that have signed up for this program in Ghana. We have 20 farms in Nigeria as of yesterday, and we have 12 different countries where there's at least one farmer in that particular country, ranging from 15 countries in Africa, St. Kitts and Nevis, thanks to Yashan, and the United States. So we're looking to bring on as many farms as possible. We want to get to at least 10,000 farms by 2030 all over the world. So that's the basis of the 1 hectare sustainable farm. It's year one of a much bigger program called the Fight for 15. The Fight for 15 is a global compact, just like the United Nations has a global compact. The AU has the Agenda 2063. Black people needed something as far as a long-term plan. So the Fight for 15 model is to create 15,000 jobs in 15 different industries over the next 15 years in 15 African countries and in 15 Black communities around the world. Will eventually create 50 million jobs by 2040. So all of that starts with agriculture, and the 1 hectare sustainable farm is a flagship program.
Okay, so that's a lot, and there's a lot that is included in that because we still haven't even touched on the fact that the training is going to be USDA certified. You could be certified organic. We haven't touched on the aspect of you being able to ensure that the products that are going to be created in terms of the value added products that they're going to be branded, and you're also going to be involved in seeking to ensure that they get to the various market spaces and even into the US market. we can include that into this part because that's the part that I think we should get into a little bit more now, which is the cannabis side of things. What can Nevis, especially seeing that they have recently decriminalized cannabis, opened up a medicinal cannabis space. There is room for recreational or personal use and or spiritual and religious, but there are some issues that needs to be sorted out on that side. However, in terms of the medical, they have rolled out in terms of the licenses and all that and so forth. What is it we are seeking to offer in the cannabis space and the hemp space that you think the government of not just St. Kitts and Nevis, but the Caribbean, because there are other Caribbean territories that have made some forward steps in regards to cannabis. So, what are we providing from our platform and in our space as a part of the cannabis and hemp and medical cannabis and developing products and all that of the cannabis space?
Thank you for that question. So I think the short answer is really simple, and it's, the protection of the public. My professional opinion, being around politicians and running political campaigns and educating them in this space, is the number one issue is weed is a drug in their mind. And so how do we keep drugs off of the street? How do we keep people safe? But ultimately, how do we keep control so that it doesn't get out of control? That's one of the major challenges that any government faces, is how do we allow our citizens freedom, but how do we as a government keep control, so some level of control over that freedom? And I think that's what the 1 Hectare Sustainable Farm provides. In the cannabis and hemp space, there's a lot of room for advancement, right? There are people that are doing high level indoor grows that are, cloning various types of strains for various types of purposes, whether it be retail consumption or it be medicinal use. But at the end of the day, there are what they call the innocents. So these are children, the elderly, vulnerable communities that elected officials will call vulnerable communities, that may not know the difference between cannabis and hemp. They may not know the proper usage of cannabis. The youth especially are, trying to escape from some of the challenges of their lives, whether it be bullying or, poverty or just lack thereof, anything that they're lacking of. They reach out to these illicit drugs that politicians say spark from cannabis, which is probably 95% untrue, but that's how they think. So in order to get into the mind of a politician, to be able to have them enact legislation when they're not even thinking about it is the first challenge. But then if you get past that and there is legislation, it's how do we implement it in order to still keep the public safe and still be able to give the public their freedom. And I think the 1 Hectare Sustainable Farm is not only the way to do that, particularly in St. Kitts and Nevis. I think I read over your particular policy, is that they want to create these centralized areas. So if you want to have smoke a joint or a blunt, or you want to have tea or whatever that is, in America they call them consumption lounges. But the consumption lounges in America, most of them you can't smoke. You can have edibles, you can have some kind of, alcoholic beverages, things like that, but there's no smoking. But if you had a farm, an outdoor space that is a controlled environment, it's only on 1 hectare, it's monitored, there's security, it's a safe space for those to practice their religious preferences, for those to, take their medicine in a safe space. The 1 Hectare Sustainable Farm can provide that. It provides a controlled environment because of the components in the farm, but it's the value chain that's also created in that same environment. So if we start looking at the government structure of implementing any type of national program, there are various different ministries that have to be involved. the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Interior, and then now with hemp being used as biofuel, now we're getting into the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Trade. Almost every section of government can touch the cannabis and hemp space or the agriculture space. But what does that look like, particularly for each of them? And that's where the global supply chain comes in. That's where the 100 sustainable farm creating the farm products into value added products, whether it be CBD oil or it be, hemp concrete or textiles. All of that can be produced on that same 1 hectare, but it also can be attached to where it's needed. So there's not a oversaturation in the market of one particular product that still have a competition for it. You don't have an external competition market. So the Chamber of Commerce I speak about, the organization that I started, the African Diaspora Collective, has built that physical bridge between taking those farm products in the cannabis, hemp, or general agriculture space and connecting them to the U.S. market, the Caribbean market, the South American market, and the African market. We've been able to do that through my network of politicians, through my time in politics, but also in the agriculture space, going to talk to farmers in general about what are the needs of these two demographics. Farmers want to grow hemp. Farmers want to grow cannabis because they know the economic opportunities that are available. However, the barriers in America are so high to entry into the retail cannabis space, there had to be other options. Africa's an option. The Caribbean now is an option. But where is your distribution market? How are you going to get your value added products to these spaces? If you have 10, 15 acres of cannabis, who are you selling it to? And is that market sustainable? And are you driven by, market prices that you have created, or are you driven by external forces and how they're pricing you in the market? Those are all things that the 1 hectare sustainable farm and governments have an opportunity to have some control, but people can still feel free, as we say in Africa. They can feel free to smoke if they have, spiritual rituals that they would like to do in regards to this plant. They can do that at the 1 hectare sustainable farm. And I think that every level of government can attach themselves to one of these farm models. If it's the Ministry of Education, you have four or five farm models because the government of Ghana wants a farm at every school. So that means primary school needs a farm, middle school needs a farm, high school needs a farm, universities need a farm to feed the university students. That's a revenue generation stream. Cannabis is necessary for research purposes for medicine. So we talk about HIV, we talk about diabetes, we talk about high cholesterol, we talk about vascular diseases, we talk about cancer treatments. All of these things need research, but they need research from herbal medicines like cannabis that can be used at this same 1 hectare sustainable farm. So I spent probably 2.5 years trying to figure out how to find solutions to a lot of different problems along the value chain. And cannabis is the solution. Hemp is a solution not only for most of these challenges along the value chain, but also the challenges that Black people have with economic liberation. How are we going to afford to run the revolution? How are we going to afford to run the movement? Whatever that revolution is for you, whatever that movement is for you, needs money. And that money doesn't necessarily have to come from smoking weed. It can come from value-added products. It can come from education. It can come from graphic design. It can come from biofuel. It can come from the construction industry. It can come from numerous different spaces, but it can all start on 1.5 hectare or 2.5 acres. Everybody doesn't have 10 or 100 acres, but you have a plot, you have a backyard. Your grandma has, half an acre somewhere. Your family members have collectively 2 acres somewhere. So this model and its components can be fit anywhere. It's a bespoke product. that the 1 Hectare Sustainable Farm can really revolutionize the cannabis and hemp space in a small way that can be scaled to make a global impact.
Banky, based on what you've heard, any questions for Davisha? Any comments? Like based on what you've heard so far.
Well, similar to like what we discussed and some of the issue when it comes to agrotourism and education and stuff like that is the space at 2.5 acres might seem small to someone who understands spaces, but at the same time you can compact a lot and design it to hold a lot of stuff. Can be a model, so I understand stuff like that. So the way how we should think is on the right path. We can have many different models, agro processing businesses and stuff like that, schools, healthcare. So how frequency and wavelength is on the right path. That's the way everything should build and surround agriculture, because that's the life force. But many don't think they're into agriculture, even if they're selling clothes or they're selling food. Once they're not outside in the field itself and doing the work, they're not seeing themselves as selling agricultural products, but they're selling value added products. The supermarkets are into agriculture, the clothing store is into agriculture. So Ambassador is on the right path. So if you have more land, then you have more space to do more acreage. You see what I mean? That's the beauty of it. But doesn't mean you can compact it. Some of those models into a quarter acre or half acres, whatever works for you. So it boils down to no space is too small. Basically, that's
But
what
one of
she's
the
saying. Even if
things,
it's back,
one of the things that I
yes,
like to Banky, one of the things that I like with it is the fact that it can
yeah,
work as a demo model, because one
of
of the
course,
challenges that I have sometimes in explaining, okay, like because we're farmers, right, and we
yes,
we we are creatives to some extent. We could visualize things in our head space, so to speak,
of course,
right?
yes,
So we know, we see what it looks like before it is even on paper, or it is even on the ground. Now,
yes,
the challenge sometimes, because of the fact that in agriculture it's a challenge to get finance, sometimes in order to present these projects to people who finance, when you do explain as much as possible, it is still sometimes so abstract to them that one of the only ways to really get them to see it is to have an actual model. And so when I heard of the 1 hectare, that's what like kind of captivated me, is the fact that okay, it's not too much land to ask for, it's not too much space, but I'm going to show you. It's like the person who have a little backyard garden and say, okay, well, I'm going to show you with this little space what I can do
yeah,
with this little space. And then I'm going to take this little 2.5 acres and we're going to put in not just a farm, but we're going to put in the agro processing side. We're going to put in the energy side. We're going to put in that side. We're going to put in the business component. We're going to have the
of course,
ability to come and tour the farm as well. And all of these different components, so that at the end, and the training aspect of it as well. So at the end, you have a demonstration model for the nation to see that they can benefit from it, because it will be generating money, it will be training the young people, and and at the same time helping with food security at the same time, and then giving you the opportunity to as well take the value added products that's going to be created, because they're going to help you with creating the value added products, teach you about the branding and all of the business side, which is very much lacking in our sector, teach you about finance and so on and all of that, and then be able to help you take the product to the market, whether it is the US market or the Brazilian market or the Mexico market or the Asian market or wherever it is. So it's dealing with all of the aspects and components of the agro business, what we really able to show youth and attract more of our young people into this space as well too, because they're going to be seeing, buy, my hands, but I could get into the science side of it. I could get into the transportation side. I could be into, as she said, graphics, because you're gonna need people to create the logos and labels and brands and all of these different things and so forth. So, um, quite an interesting project, and that's one of the reasons why I got on board and sought to begin to push this in the Caribbean, and then I decided, you know what, as a person from St. Kitts and Nevis, I have to make sure that we have this on St. Kitts and Nevis, because also the other part that I still did not mention is the fact that if we're the first one in the Caribbean to set up this, then it means that the folks who are trained there would be the first set of people that are going to be used to do the training for the rollout in the other Caribbean territories. So you would not just be training people for St. Kitts and Nevis, but then they would be able to use their skills now and move to whether it's Jamaica or it's Dominica or it's Grenada, because when we set up there, we're going to need people to train the original people there as well. So instead of having to bring people from Africa or somewhere else to do the training, so it would be sort of like train the trainers. So they will be able to go and train the others, and then the others train the others, and we have that skill, those set of skills, being able to pass on throughout our communities. So quite, an interesting opportunity. It's at the tables of both governments, because we would have presented it to the federal government and also to the Nevis Island government. So it's just up to them at this point to be able to respond and say, okay, well, this is something that we are willing to work with, and we're going to work with, and we're ready to roll out. So that's where we are with that. But just using
Can
the
I speak to
opportunity,
that?
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to, not to cut you off, but I just wanted to speak to that part about the training. So we call our training the education to job creation model. So we have a training through the Cooperative Executive Management Team, or the Cooperative Executive Management Team facilitates a training for organic farming with the USDA. So the USDA has what's called the National Organic Plan. And the National Organic Plan is how does the United States as a nation develop, control, implement, and monitor how they grow organic food, how do they process it into the market, how is it labeled, how is it, what are the trade agreements, what are the countries, what are the psychosanitary conditions, everywhere from livestock to fish farming to regular cash crops, grains, all types of things. So they have a program online where they offer these classes. So as I said before, everything is not for everybody. So I chose classes that particularly would benefit Africans in West Africa based on the education level, based off of the type of environment for farming culture in Africa. We developed a program. We're now in our 5th cohort. We've trained people in 17 different countries around the world, over 100 people from, people that work at ministries of agriculture, to understand what are the standards in the U.S. government in order to grow organically. Everyone knows that organic produce is higher value in the market. Everyone knows also that it's a little bit more time consuming, labor intensive than just putting a seed in the ground and waiting for rain. So that takes training. But that also means that when people go through training, they want a job. They expect some type of follow up to the training. So in our program, it's a 6-week model. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Class starts on Monday, this Monday. It runs for 6 weeks. It's $50 for the class. Now, this is where the government is being taught a lesson per se. So I developed this in order for it to be scalable, to teach African governments in particular how to make their own money and how to nation build themselves. This is before Ibrahim Traore. This is before the coups of West Africa. This is before a lot of different things that living in Africa, I wanted to find a solution to how do we stop being so dependent on other people? How do we be, as Black people, more independent on ourselves? But how do I get government to understand what that looks like? And that comes through our training program. So the education to job creation is the students pay their $50 to come into the course. The course is 6 weeks with the USDA coursework. The USDA will give you a transcript of each of the courses that you've taken. The USDA will give you continuing education units. So if you're in agribusiness and you want to train your employees, you can send them to our program. And at the end, the USDA will give them continuing education units for each class. There are 8 to 12 classes per cohort. So that's education specified in each particular area from the USDA. And then the Cooperative Executive Management Team as a company also gives you a certification to be an organic certifier at our farms, at our 1 hectare sustainable farms, because each of the 1 hectare sustainable farms is also 100% organic. So that's where the education component comes from, with regenerating soil and so forth. So the model behind education started with the high school model. How do we change the training into actual jobs? Because there's no real jobs in Africa, and there's definitely no real, or West Africa, I should say, and there's definitely no real jobs that people can see in the agriculture space outside of cultivation. So we created that opportunity through the program. So the top of the class that graduate from our program are then brought back and hired as trainers. So you might have gone through cohort number 4, and if you're the valedictorian and graduate at the top of your class, we invite you to come back to be paid to train the next class for level 1. So we automatically give you a job after you pay this $50 if you are at the top of your class. If you're not at the top of your class, there's still an opportunity to now, because you've been trained and now you have continuing education units, you have a certification from us, you can design organic system plan. So in the USDA system, the organic certifiers have what's called an OSP, an organic system plan. So each of the agencies have to go physically to your farm and basically pop up on you and make sure that you're following the regulations of the United States Department of Agriculture. Those are not only services that the USDA charges the farmer for, but you as an individual can create your own entity and become an agency that certifies farms. So the USDA did not have any organic certifiers in Africa until we started this program last year. They now have one in Ghana, because we had over 60 people at one time from Ghana and Nigeria sign up for this USDA program. So they're like, where did all these people come from all of a sudden? It came from us. It came from this program. And now they're certifiers in Ghana. We're moving this over to Nigeria. So it automatically creates jobs. We then go to the government and say, look, on this 1 hectare, we have an a full education program. We have a full youth employment program. We have a full youth and women business program to create businesses from the value addition products that are made from the farm. But those all take training. So we have about 6 different trainings, from livestock farming to veggie produce to how to transition your farm from a regular farm to an organic farm. All of these things lead into the 1 hectare sustainable farm, and that's what we present to government. We have a holistic, bespoke, full service solution to about 7 different global challenges for these governments, but the number one solution is to self-sustainability. These farms can build enough revenue to not only feed your country, but also provide jobs for your youth, so that people aren't rushing to America to go find a job, or people in Africa aren't rushing to the UK to go find a job. All of these things can be solved with the 1 hectare sustainable farm. So I just wanted to mention that.
No problem. Wonderful. Banky, as you would realize, we would have had so much from Ambassador Johnson, and very much, detailed in explaining. So there's no doubt that she knows what she's talking about.
Yes,
She
sorry.
she is, putting what it is that is available on the table, and there's so much for us to benefit from. At this point, Africa is benefiting from it. And that's one of the reasons why I got on board, because in communicating with her, and I realized, okay, all of this is happening and all of these possibilities are happening in Africa. And when I look at some of the issues and challenges that the farmers are faced with in Africa, very, very similar to the challenges that we are faced with in the Caribbean. And so I just embraced this. Some of what she's doing, I see I can tie into even some of the things that I have planned as well. So apart from separately reaching out to the government to, get on board and to really embrace this project, I myself have plans down the road to be able to, because it's a small model, as you mentioned, it doesn't have to be one, and there's several versions of it. So even if one person have one that might be dealing with the children, there might be another one that deals with maybe the training in terms of the agro processing. There's the other one that might be dealing with the aquaponics and the hydroponics and those kind of technology
Of
and so
course.
forth. So it is really, really a lot for us to know. And Banky, I know that there's sometimes I would have been saying some of these things on the program, but I wanted to be
Yes.
able to bring her, be able to say this in, because sometimes how people think, the
See
little
what
boy
happened,
from
yes,
West Lake.
on You see, what happened is that the ambassador, she's making agriculture pretty, making agriculture sexy, and this is what you need. You just don't always want to hear it from a man's perspective, because agriculture is one of those science where it's not gender bias, and this is where we keep talking about all the time. You need different representative that can reach different target audience. You just don't want to see the same face over and over, because you would not look at the ambassador and think she would know anything about agriculture, but you can see she's very experienced. You understand? I mark hard, and I'm just
But
listening because yes,
Banky, you missed the introduction, because introduction, what she explained, that she actually is coming from the architectural field. So she's an architect by trade, architect in construction, planning and
o-
development. So
of course,
she was
beautiful,
able to use some of the skills from that and transfer it
of
into
course,
agriculture. Her parents were into agriculture, but she mentioned it
yes,
was due to COVID and the circumstances
okay.
within the COVID era that forced her, with her children, to be able to start to get into planting and so on, and then eventually, so it is quite an interesting story, and I'm really grateful,
They all go hand in hand.
Ambassador.
It all balances out. Because the farm
No,
still need
I'm grateful that
infrastructure,
she was
and
able
yes,
to share the
beautiful.
story, to share her story, be so
Yes,
open, to share
yes,
all of, her details, and explain, that journey from, being in America, because that's the other thing. She was living in America. So she's not originally from
yes,
Ghana. She was living in America,
yes.
relocated from America, living in Ghana, saw what's going on in Ghana, saw the opportunities, and was able to manage what's happening there. And now, hand to this part of the no, that is part of the problem. I mentioned this when I began talking to Ambassador Johnson, because a lot of the times when we speak about the diaspora, it is like Africans who are in America, Africans who are in Canada, Africa who in England and other parts of Europe and so on. A lot of the time, the Caribbean is not even on the radar. It's not even a thought. So,
Yes.
when I began, talking to her, that's when she began looking to do a little bit more research for herself, and then eventually came back and telling me, seem as if she actually have some direct roots on St. Kitts and Nevis as well. So that's another story in itself. And as a part of that, um, we are working on the direct flights aspect. So remember, the government went to Nigeria, and they spoke about the possibilities of direct flights and cargo and so on out of
Hmm.
Nigeria and Ghana. Well, we are working on
Yes.
that as we speak. So government officials who are listening, be ready to engage in the conversation, and not just in St. Kitts and Nevis, within the Caribbean region, because it is the Caribbean that we are seeking to tap into and help to make sure that we can do this. As we speak, Ambassador Johnson, I'm seeing that the government in Ghana actually is pushing as much as possible to get Ghana Airways back in and on the run. And so we have to, work along with them and see how we can also not just get Ghana up and running, but also see how we can tap into that Ghana and Caribbean market space. Banky, any other thing you wanna touch with the ambassador with before we wrap up? Because we would have been here for almost 2 hours. We started a bit late, but 2 hours have gone so quickly, and still we haven't even covered so many things. So, Ambassador, please note that you will be invited back, to finish and have some more conversation and share some more of the experience, because I'm sure, apart from the agricultural side of things, people expressed in terms of the fact that you people who are here in the Caribbean, who are in the Caribbean, are thinking of going to America, and here you in America, leaving America, going to Africa, and telling people in the Caribbean that you should come to Africa. You should, you should begin to start to do business with Africa and trade with Africa and so on. And we have the opportunity to do just that, and it's a Nevis, because at this point, yourself and myself, we have made that connection, and we are seeking to do just what you would have highlighted. I'm just grateful that it is you who's doing it and not me trying to toot my own horn, right? It's just now at the end of the day for these things to manifest. So, Banky, anything you want to add or chime in or ask
Yes,
or
what's jump out, as you know, I believe in training, 'cause that is very important. Right now, we have some training going on to Indonesia when it comes to agro processing, when it comes to jellies and smoked bananas and chips and different stuff. As you know, that's taking place right now. Um, Also, I'm partnering with Southern University in Louisiana to work along with the US, well, let me say, the FDA, when it comes to training our farmers with workshop, and right hand, I mean, Ambassador speaking about working with the USDA with practically, because we don't ship food to the US, yes, son, and we have a lot of wastage when it comes to mangoes, we have a lot of soursop, we have avocados, we have fruitful place, you know what I'm saying? We have a lot of pomegranate and different stuff that could be shipped, but we don't, even when it comes to making your teas and it's like, I went to New York in the end of March there for my daughter's wedding, and I go in some herbal store, and they're begging me for all kind of different herbal bush because I can't get it in Jamaica, but we have them down here on my farm, just running wild sauce up leaves, they're selling by the ounce, $3 for $5 is like, really? It's like
yeah,
they're asking for
man,
all
yeah,
these
things
different,
that we're taking
so
for
I'm just
granted.
showing you. So, but these things, when we're shipping them in, you need to have, the model when it comes to pest is something you're going to be looking at, and this is the key. So you have to follow the rules, but so being trained, and so it's just the government to reach out to, cause the FDA was in two meetings with two gentlemen from the FDA, and and they stick around for at least 2 hours to be a part of the meeting with the dean and stuff like the president, and they'll say we'll come down and do all this training for free because they want to partner. You see what I mean, with the Caribbean. So sometimes the resources are there, but then we just got to reach out. It's not going to cost you nothing. All you just need to do just so we need help because I want to trade into our farmers to trade into the US and stuff like that, and they want to trade teas, your juices, all this stuff. So I was glad and happy to hear. 'Cause my main thing when the ambassador was speaking about all the different components and stuff like that when it comes to the schools and the farms and the different models, well, the training, that is key. You see what I mean? 'Cause some might have the interest, but don't know nothing about farming. So you must have continuity. So by having the master trainers that will continue teaching the others, which is a brilliant. I mean, so everything is well sorted out, and the ambassador is well informed and well knowledgeable, and definitely would love to have her more on the show and to have a get some more information and get into our head a lot more. But in my book, thumbs up. You know what I'm saying? I mark hard, so she understands what's going on. So I'm happy to hear when I hear females speaking like this, because I have all girls. I have a lot of sisters, 6 of them. So I'm just always on the female
Wow.
side. So when I hear females speak like this, and you all hear me saying agriculture is not gender biased, and from an architect and transition herself into different role when it comes to politics and still understand the agricultural sector, it shows it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, man, I love it. Definitely. So looking forward having your back, and greatly appreciated you chose to be on Real Entertainment Network. Big up yourself.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So and Banky, I was very much impressed with the training aspect as well, and that was
Yes,
one of
I.
the key parts that jumped out at me that I think that St. Kitts and Nevis would benefit from, and not just St. Kitts and Nevis, but the Caribbean, um, to
Yes.
be because remember, like I keep saying, okay, we don't have large land spaces like many countries. We don't have the hectares. We have acres. So
Yes.
um, if we are able to then add value instantly to the produce before you even get to the product side by organic certification, that's a big jump. So you have that aspect that we're coming with, and then to be USDA certified, it means that your produce and or products will be instantly open to the US markets. And so those are two critical areas that any farmer, any government, or any persons who are into farming are even going to consider investing too, in such a project, would see that it is carefully thought through, and all of the different areas and aspects are dealt with, and it's just to invest and let's roll forward. And so,
Yes, on
Ambassador,
any
I
thing there?
really,
Any
in
comments
terms of
before we
comments,
go? Any comments? Yes.
no, I really just enjoy her my bless. I really see nothing else. I am not on the YouTube platform, so I didn't really see that. But this tonight just might be one of those nights that we didn't really get to pay too much attention to the comments because we were so involved and engrossed with the information and all of the knowledge and experience and all that's been shared by Ambassador Johnson.
Yes.
And I'm sure too, maybe that's why most of them didn't really even comment. They were just, soaking in and taking in
Listening.
all of this information and all of this opportunity. So I am grateful to have met you, Ambassador, and to be able to continue to push this work and this vision. I am one who really believe in this building this bridge between Africa and the Caribbean, and this is one opportunity to do so. Like many might not know that it's what over a year now we've been working behind the scenes, and so it's not something that I've really spoken about a lot, but I guess nothing happens before its time. And I guess right now is the time for us to really begin to do this a bit more, and really seek to bridge that gap. And so we're going to be looking for support in every shape and form, Banky, from the general public on St. Kitts and Nevis, from the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, and the governments and people throughout the region. We see what's going on with the tariff wars. We see what's going on with even the immigration issues and so on, where it seems as if our people are being targeted again, to some extent. So with some of these things, even though I'm not happy that we have to be forced to take some actions, I am still grateful that it is forcing us to take the actions. And so I want us to continue on that energy and support, as the sister mentioned, people like Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso, and the other countries who are standing up and saying, no, I mean, we can do this for ourselves. We can break down these barriers. There are things that we really need to do in terms of, building proper roads and railways, and break down these visa restrictions and so on, these things, these relics of colonial past, of the Belgium conference. We have some of these issues, and that's one of the reasons to assist in why a lot of the issues that's taking place in Africa is very similar to what's taking place in the Caribbean. One of the major difference is that you all are connected by one land mass in most cases. In the Caribbean, we're separated by waters. But in terms of the same, colonial era, where some of us were colonized by Spain, some were colonized by France, some were colonized by Britain, and there's still some of these, issues where we have language issues, we have, cultural norms issues. We have some who still are so engrossed in their colonial mindset that they still have not found who they really are. So all of these struggles are not just in Africa, but we are facing and dealing with them here. So it is really a pleasure to have like you. But well, you say in Canada, was rooted to America. So you got those two European, so to speak, experiences, and then you went to Africa, experienced Africa, and is able now to tell people like me and others who are looking at whether doing more business with Africa, relocating to Africa, doing business in Africa, that yes, it's a safe place, it's a safe space. Come on over. There's lots of opportunities. And so it's really good to even get that side. So tonight, this show, you did a number of things. So you were able to shed some light on that space. You were able to shed some light in the agricultural space and also some of the other things that we are working on, and we still haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg in terms of a lot of the other things that we are doing behind the scenes. But like we said, you have that opportunity to come back, and we're definitely going to invite you back, and I'm sure the people want you back. So thank you very much again, and we really look forward to having you on our next program. Banky, your final comments, and then we'll have our real entertainment team wrap up.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in on another Friday evening. Shows that you have that interest when it comes to agriculture and the environment and the whole, because it's all about doing it safe when anything that goes into your body, whether it's cannabis and whether it's your fruits and vegetables. And also, if you're going to cannabis, something need to be put in place, a class where you should be able to go accept a percentage amount of food also, and not just occupy the land with just cannabis itself, but at least some fruit trees or whatever it is should be incorporated. And that itself would also help bring down the food import bill wherever you're at. This is how you're supposed to have this thing designed and stuff like that. But definitely, it was a beautiful show. I mean, I know it's getting late, but from what listening to the Davisha speaking and talking about in Decatur, Georgia, where I mean her children going outside and coming and picking up bullet shells and stuff like that. I mean, it shows that she was in and not in her own home. She's not in a good space, so she just wanted a different change of environment. She could have moved to a different state if she wanted to. I mean, out of her neighbor and going to a different area in Georgia, down south or whatever. But she chose to go way, you understand, to a different place where she felt that I guess it's something she always wanted, and she used that opportunity to take the chance. And it shows she's a very brave person, and she's a gambler, and she knows what she wants. So I love that. You don't find people take this kind of move because they tend to listen to what's going on in the media, and then don't realize it's like where I'm at, yeah, son. I'm in the hills, and first thing you tell me, well, you don't hear the drumbeats and see the those different ghosts and stuff like that. But yet you have the expats living up in the hillside the same way. But there's but they're good enough. But then you as a local still conditioned to be stay within a certain area within the island and don't want to be in the hillside where everybody, and then the same those who come from outside looking down above you, and you don't come back in a fine space and not don't have no space and don't have the privacy. So it just shows you how the conditioning is run. So they're moving from their home and coming to your island. Well, what do you think they do? They love you. They love what you have here. And this is how I speak all the time. They don't love you. They love what you have. It's just like in Swahili, they call it the Wazunga. You understand? You're a foreigner. They just come to take. They're just going to take. And in a brony, you understand? They have the same with this term where it's like you have this the heart of a 2-year-old you're taking, and it's the same thing. So the media controls a lot of stuff. So even as the ambassador is saying, well, they're just gonna show, but they're gonna go there. So if they go and you go too, it means something is good. You go San Domingo, you'll be amazed. You got Jamaica. It's the same thing. We've just been canned in a system way, not to just condition to stay one place. We're not a true brethren. You know what I'm saying? The earth is ours. You're supposed to go move anywhere and set up business anywhere as you want to. That's what you have to think, because that's what everybody else does. So why do you just want to think you just? I have the right to go and buy property in Jamaica, in Guyana, in Grenada, in the U.S. Because it was always the U.S. belongs to us. The whole world belongs to us. And the quicker we understand these things and realize we're the architects of everything around us, you ain't got nothing to worry about. You're not trying to. You don't need someone opinion to don't need validation, and we need to stop validation from others. That's the problem, you see. And that's always with children. Know yourself, know your God self.
Yes.
You don't need nobody else's opinion. You understand? No matter how they come to you, just know you're the ancient one and you're original, and that's it. Nothing else matter. They can't change that matter how they think. That's it. It doesn't matter. The how they think don't change who you are. You know what I'm saying? But apart from that, I mean, I love the ambassador. I would love to have her back some more. You know what I mean? And continue the reason and stuff like that, because you're getting a different look. We have a lot of different young people listening to shows, females, middle age, elders, and stuff like that. And definitely coming from a female perspective, I know they really love this conversation. And today, I just want to big up Akeisha Fergus, our next young lady. I mean, two-time queen in the Caribbean, a queen here in the island, and take up the challenge of getting to agriculture and now doing beautiful things. She just end up in ICA with a write up with the work she's been doing from her juice bar, and then end up into a 2 acre farm and doing success story. Didn't know anything about agriculture, but doing her juice bar and realize she can try to save some money of buying the fruits and stuff, and could have control the price of of a smoothie bar. And when she called me and they reached out, and she had that interest and work along with her. And now it's a beautiful thing. You see what I mean? It just shows you just need the commitment and the consistency. And she been the queen for the Caribbean and queen here in the island of Nevis, and she just been always working for herself. So you can't beat stuff like this. You see what I mean? So when people eating her fruits, and she nourishing other people. So this is what we want. Yes, so we want young females like the ambassador to be the face of agriculture. You don't want to see what want be my rough face and the kind of vibe. That's not nice. You understand? You want bright smiles and all this stuff. You know what I mean? Personality, mega personality is there, and that will draw more people, and that is what we're talking about all the time. So, ambassador, big up yourself, and looking forward to you do much more. Yes, son.
Yeah, man. Well,
Thank you.
Banky, it's at that point where we will be saying good evening to our wonderful followers and listeners and all those who are on YouTube. Remember to like and share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to be more active in that space, even though we're on YouTube and Twitch. I want to also say, people, this has been the first in a series of conversations we're going to have in terms of realistically bridging gap between Africa and the Caribbean, not just in the agricultural sector, but in a lot of different sectors. But we are going to use this platform to be able to engage you more and share more of that excitement with you. We have two ambassadors here. I am the ambassador for the Caribbean as a part of this organization, and also as another organization in Ghana that is called Yenkofe. I'm also the ambassador for that African Caribbean connection as well. So behind the scenes, I'm doing a lot for that space, and we're going to be doing much more in terms of reaching out to our governments on St. Kitts and Nevis and governments in the Caribbean. So please share this, let them hear, make sure that they understand that whatever they're looking for in terms of making that connection, it don't have to continue to be talk anymore. We can make it a reality, and we will make it a reality. So with that, people, enough love, and I know you're going to want to hear more. be tuned. Stay tuned when we tell you that the ambassador will be back. Banky, enough respect. Real Entertainment Network team, enough
Big
love,
up,
everybody.
Ambassador.
Until next week, Ambassador Johnson, enough love, enough respect.
What's up? Thank you. I appreciate
Yes,
both
sir.
of you. I appreciate the time. I look forward to working with you both. And just know that in my final words, that agriculture is Black culture. And yes, we are trying to make farming sexy and to rebrand
Yes, I.
the way we think about farming for the 20th century. So I'm very excited to be welcome back, and I will be back to have more discussions. And as you said, the time for talking is over. It's time to act. And I'm about movement, so I'm ready to move and come to wherever I need to go, wherever the spirit moves me to be. My purpose here is to connect Black people. And that's what I've been doing, and that's what I will continue to do. And all of that happens through food. So let's break bread and, break bread figuratively and literally and help
Yes,
grow some
I.
people, grow some community for our culture. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're welcome, everybody. See you guys next week, Tuesday, on another edition of The Topics, and next week, Friday, again, for another edition of Everything Agriculture.
Tune in. It's inspirational, educational, and you won't want to miss it. It's everything agriculture.
Okay. Yes, that's about it. All right.
It's all about everything agriculture with the man Banky and Company alongside Yason Tafari. It's your weekly educational show. And tune in. It's inspirational, educational, and you won't want to miss it. It's everything agriculture.